Hello everyone, I'm Danny Wilkinson and I'm a management coach, and welcome to the Boss Moves podcast. When you get promoted, it can feel like you've bitten off more than you can chew. You're constantly faced with new situations you've never faced before, you're asked to make tough calls, and on top of that, you've got a team to lead. It can feel a lot. That's why we're here to listen, explore and share ideas that will help you become the manager you can be. Each episode, we speak to a new manager or recently promoted manager to explore an issue that's on their mind, something they might be struggling with or just holding them back. Whether it's having that difficult conversation, giving feedback or learning how to manage upwards, we're here to listen. Today's episode, we're lucky enough to be joined by Kieran Moriarty, who's an internal communications manager at a big well-known charity. Kieran and I have known each other for a long time, and I've seen him grow from an unsure colleague into a confident manager. Today's discussion, Kieran wants to talk about team development and how best to develop a team, how to avoid micromanaging, and how to make sure that you're delegating in a way that's helping them to learn. So, listen on. Welcome, Kieran. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Good to see you, Danny.
One of the things that is probably worth just kicking off with, that management can mean a lot of different things to different people. So I just wanted you to sort of maybe tell us a little bit about how you found making that jump from being a team member to a manager.
Yeah, I guess the overarching thing, obviously, responsibility is the big change, and everyone that you'll speak to will say that. But it's what comes with that. I think when you're a team member, you're there. Your kind of job is to provide solutions or options, whereas when you become a manager, it's up to you to make the decisions. So that's probably the overarching thing that I found changing from going, right, these are the options that we have, to actually going, right, I've got to make a decision here. And you know that although you're going to try and make all of them, as many of them as possible, correct, you're going to make a couple of wrong decisions along the way. And having the kind of, like you say, the kind of openness, the willingness to make those decisions. I think that's the key thing for me as being a manager, is rather than kind of dilly-dallying on it, actually being decisive and going ahead and making those decisions is a difference between kind of hitting the ground running to kind of stumbling around through it. So yeah, decision making, I think, was the big switch from team member to manager.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember one of my first managers saying something to me which was along the lines of, there's only one thing worse than making a bad decision, and that's not making a decision.
Yeah, exactly.
I think,
you see a lot of people do that, don't you? That they just they're so scared of making the wrong decision, they don't do anything, and then they've got their boss breathing down their neck as well. So yeah, that's the one thing that I always think about.
Yeah, that's a great one, mate. And I think that's a great one. And exactly what we've just talked about, bad decisions and wrong decisions. How do you decide what is a bad decision or a wrong decision anyway? So many times you weigh up the evidence, it looks like the best thing. It doesn't quite go the way you imagine it. So learning to accept that is part of the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So thanks for being with us today. I just you obviously brought something with you today. So what would you like to explore for us? Just tell us a little bit about what you want to talk about.
Sure. So I think that the big thing for me, and the key to a good manager is team development. So you know what to do in your role, but how do you develop your team members to be as good as they can possibly be? And kind of learning how to develop different styles of people as well. It's not everyone's the same. Not everyone has the same development path. Not everyone's got the same kind of skills, and it's about, for me, trying to understand how do I get the best out of one set of skills and another set of skills to kind of reach the overarching goal of my team, to be a high functioning communications team. So how do I get the best out of different characters? And it's something that I've always wondered about throughout my career. I've obviously managed different people at different times, and what's the best way to do that, or what are some of the techniques that I could kind of bring in to my skill set to make sure I'm bringing people on, getting them enthused about working and developing them at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, it's a good question. So, what have you found hardest when you tried what you describe as developing people? What have you found hard about that? What's been the biggest thing on your mind?
I think the one thing that I worry about doing too much of is micromanaging, and kind
Mm,
of not allowing people to take the reins, trying to be as clear as possible with what you want, but without kind of going, right, I need you to do this, this, and this, and checking on them constantly to make sure that they're doing that. I've yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I think we've all experienced micromanaging before. We
mhm.
know how
Yeah,
detrimental that can be to just, number
yeah,
one, your enjoyment of work, let alone your development. And it's one thing that I've always been very acutely aware of that I don't want to do. But how do you stop yourself from doing that when maybe someone isn't picking up the thing? You think you've explained something clearly, but maybe they're not picking it up as quickly as you'd anticipate, I guess.
yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, the way you spoke there, it sounds like a man speaking from experience has been micromanaged, um, and it's not conducive, is it? It's something that has a sort of a counterproductive effect, where the manager wants to show you and help you more, and yet you feel like you're constrained away by the fact that they're clearly showing you and telling you more and more, and you're thinking that, oh, they don't trust me to do this. Okay,
Exactly, yeah.
so what are the sort of what are the things that you've tried so far that you've to try and develop your team? Where do you see the places that what you might develop them?
Um, so I think it's, without trying to be too role specific, I think it's just getting my team into a position. I guess number one, confidence to say no to people, confidence to
Okay.
take time over something,
Yeah,
and really understand what's being asked of them,
yeah,
um, and then being able to go back to someone and deliver that with kind of, and then instill confidence in other people. When you're asked to do work, the big thing that a stakeholder is probably looking for is the confidence that you know what you're doing, and we
yeah,
might know what we're doing, but how are we showing that, and how do I get my team to show that they know that what they're doing? Because I definitely do. And yeah, and I guess also another area of it is kind of that slightly bigger picture thinking,
hmm,
and kind of being a bit more proactive. How do I develop
yeah,
people to do those kind of things?
yeah. I think that one of the things that I find is the big, there's sort of two ways of doing it. One is what I call mechanical. So it's the things that you put in place, the opportunities you put in place in order to help people. So big opportunities are obviously in one-to-ones when you're having conversations. They're perhaps in ad hoc chats you're having with people. But then it's also in the delegation and when you're giving the work. So there's those mechanical kind of things, but there's a secondary side of your behavior and how you respond to them and what you do. Because I think one of the things that's really overlooked as a manager is they're watching you 24/7. Your team is watching you and everything that you do. So if you come running in the office panicked, or you don't really you look worried about a decision you're making or those kinds of things, they'll notice. And nothing wrong with that. It's kind of a human thing. But showing them that it's okay to say, this didn't go according to plan, or actually I feel like I've got quite a lot on at the moment, or whatever it is, those sort of human traits. And I think that allows them to sort of open their minds a bit more in terms of realizing that they can try things, they can do things, they can move forward. But the biggest things, obviously, the mechanical things. So like one-to-ones, making sure you've got them in at a regular time, having them in once a week. And the once a weeks are kind of having that period where I find this to be quite successful, having them once a week where you are talking about the day-to-day of the week and what they've got coming on, but having once a month where they can then talk about their development and where they want to go with their development, how they're going against their objectives, all the things that you're, informal chat about how things are going. And I know when we work together here, and one of the things that we often would go for one of those things, right? We go to a cafe somewhere. It's more informal, where people can start to sort of sit back and relax the shoulders a bit, have a coffee, and start to talk about actually how things are really going. Because when you have those, you try and squeeze them in on those weekly ones, you haven't got time for it. How have you found your one-to-ones when you've done those with your team?
Yeah, I think, and I do have that kind of set up in place, a weekly kind of BAU, business as usual, one-to-one, and then a monthly development one. And we've got some, luckily where I work, there's a big emphasis on objectives as well. So it makes it a little bit easier for you to kind of guide yourself through those conversations. But in terms, I think the one thing that I have struggled with, though, in terms of what you said, like, it is great to get out of the office. And when I first started, we were in a lot at the same times, but I work in a hybrid working model.
Yeah.
So you one-to-ones, you're not always going to be able to join up. So how do you kind of get that value in your one-to-one where it does feel, I know you're at home, so you might be feeling more comfortable, but how does that work? Is there a way to improve the virtual one-to-one, I guess?
Yeah, well, I think, look, if they're not able to get into the office and you're not, or a place where you're meeting each other on a regular basis. So I think, we often talk about the argument about getting people into an office and must come in 3 times a week or whatever it is and all that stuff. I think companies need to show the value of that to an individual. Why should you come in? So if it is possible with those situations, is pick a day of the month everybody comes in and you do have those conversations, so you're all in at the same time, rather than you being in on, say, Tuesday and then coming in on Fridays. Switch your time around, that once for that month where you're all in that one spot. Right. So there's those, and that's not always possible, I know, but it's the same principles of just trying to try and have that conversation in a way that when they're going to feel comfortable. I mean, is getting them in the office at all a possibility?
No, we do get them into the office, and we try to get in, or I try to ask my team to get in on the same day. But it's not always possible. There's a myriad of reasons why people can't make it in, from childcare, travel, all of those things that play a role in it, that some things might not be able to get together. So I'm just I guess it was more when it's not possible, and sometimes that could be because obviously you want to get that in person time as much as possible, but when it's not possible, and you can have a run of a few weeks or a few months where that kind of happens, how do you still get that feeling into a virtual session?
I understand. Well, look, one of the things I was going to come to this, but is ask them what works best for you. Is it that we do move heaven and earth to get ourselves in the same spot? Do we meet somewhere in middle part of London or wherever you live, whatever, to come and or how do we make those conversations where you feel that we can open up and we can have that open conversation? Obviously, some people by their nature don't want to open up so much, but finding out what works for them. And I think the thing I was going to say is that when you talk about development, we obviously got things we want to develop them with, but we also need to understand what they want out of development. what are their goals? Where do they go? Some people don't want to be managers. Some people don't want to move forward. They want to feel more confident in the role they're in, or they might want to move sideways, whatever. So I think starting from the basis of knowing what they want is going to help.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And something that I think I've probably struggled with a little bit is my thinking. Obviously, I like to progress and I like to get better, and not get better is the wrong word, but to kind of progress and get promoted, etc. But understanding that not everyone in your team wants to do that, is just because someone doesn't have the same career path as you doesn't mean it's that there's something that they're not, what's the right word, not ambitious to get better. It's just that their ambition isn't to be a manager or senior manager or head of or whatever. Their ambition is something else. And I think that's probably one thing that when I look back, I've probably struggled with. And that's probably a reason that I might sometimes development is one of the topics that we're talking about, is because because my idea of development is, it might be a bit different. I want to develop, I want to, how do I become head of comms or this, that, or the other? But how do I develop someone who actually that isn't their role, but they just want to be really good at what they do? It's understanding the balance of that and not pushing people too hard.
Yeah, completely. Because you're motivated. So you've always been someone who wants to learn, who wants to move forward, is ambitious, who wants to go upwards. And so and it's driven you to come and ask questions and do things. But you need to understand people's motivations, what is going to make them want to do that. And that's a key part of it. So I think we sort of went round there, but coming back round to you, Pete, about micromanaging, it's probably a good thing to ask is, what does micromanaging look like to you?
I think micromanaging to me is being really prescriptive on what's being asked of someone in your team, or being asked of you. Constantly checking in to see that you're completing that work. I think they're probably the two bigger things is basically being told step by step exactly what to do, and then being kind of almost chased on, have you done that yet? Let me see it. Let me review this, that kind of thing. So that's what I see as micromanaging in my role. Obviously, it takes on various forms, but yeah,
of course. And you have to remember that some people's idea of micromanaging is giving them clear objectives. But you're absolutely right. My view would be, in order to delegate something effectively, you really want to do is tell them what the outcome is required, and some of the parameters in between, what that looks like. So it might be, I need to give the CEO a report that's really clear on how internal communications is doing at the moment and how we're performing, and I need it to show this kind of data. I want to make sure that it's really clear about, what messages are included or something like that. Made up example. But what you're doing is you're describing the outcome and the parameters that they go between. That allows them to think through how they might want to show that information.
Yeah, I think that's the thing for me that I'm most keen on, is allowing for individuality.
Yeah, and you can. People often make the mistake that when they're worried about something, they want someone to make sure someone does something in inverted commas correctly, or where they might do it, which I think that's a complete other podcast on its own. But is that in the rush to do that, what they're not really doing is giving people the space to think, understand what it is you want to do. So you can put levels of control by telling people, I need to make sure it does 1, 2, 3, or I'm really worried about 1, 2, 3. I'm really worried. It needs to make sure that the head of HR is happy with it. I need to make sure this department knows that it's happening. Those are the things that allow them to think in between, but also knowing what worries you.
Yeah. Okay, that's yeah, I think that's probably something that I haven't done with as much clarity. I think sometimes you can worry about arbitrary thing. Well, not arbitrary, but timescales. I need it by next Friday, which you might do, and that is obviously a parameter that you can set. But yeah, I guess the setting of slightly more other kind of parameters that are more kind of task oriented or kind of or style orientated, I guess, that or considerations. I don't know the right word. I guess the right considerations to take into consideration will kind of help that.
I guess, yeah, totally. And I guess that the best example I can often think of when I think about these things is like saying, I want to get across, I need you to get to King's Cross in London by 10 o'clock tonight. If you say, I want you to go to King's Cross, I want you to travel by the Victoria line, you'll be putting down their options, and it might get, it might be that because of engineering works, it takes them 4 hours to get to King's Cross via that route. However, if you tell them, I need to get to King's Cross by 10 o'clock, they can use their minds and their creativity in between that. How do I get there quickest based on the things that have gone on in front of me? I can take the Northern Line, I can take this route, I can get round, and they're taking their own way, but they've got there.
Yeah, I get that. I think that's a good analogy, actually.
You're obviously wanting people you want to bring people forward and help them learn more about how things work. You've talked about them, how they might represent in front of other people in the business and being able to show what they're able to do and showcase what they're able to do. Tell me a little bit about what you mean.
I think, and this is, I guess, particular to comms, from my perspective, is if someone's asking you to pick up a piece of work, and I'm saying, or I might be having a conversation with a stakeholder, and I'm saying to them, I'm going to delegate this piece of work. The stakeholder might have come to me saying, I want, because we've built up a good relationship, I've got confidence in you, but I'm saying, I'm then passing my confidence on to my team member and saying, don't worry, I'm going to pass this on to my team. They'll pick it up and they'll liaise with you further. What I really want is a team that feels confident to do that, to then pick something up and go back to someone and hold really meaningful and just show the reason that I see the confidence in them is because I work with them every day. This stakeholder might only have a few interactions with them over a couple of weeks, couple of months. How do they instill the confidence in them that actually the stakeholders' work is being managed correctly? They don't need to worry as much as they may do. So it's how do they show that confidence and how do they really kind of have those meaningful conversations with stakeholders without me needing to be there, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So often when you've been in certain environments or certain stakeholders, you're probably just seeing them that the team that you're working with at that time may or may not notice. So I think with a lot of these things with development, my thought is a little bit like my old maths teacher used to say to me, show them working. So if you're doing your maths, you're doing on the test and you've got the right method, but basically you're adding up or your calculator didn't work correctly, you pressed the wrong button and it came out with the wrong number. But the examiner will see that you knew what you were doing. And I think with these things, it's imparting that experience that you have to the team to say, when you do these, when these things, you're going into meetings like this, you need to do this, this, and these are the reasons why. Or people are looking at this, and these are the reasons why. So if you turn up late to the meeting, it's not a good look. Because this person's important, and that's going to put them on a certain thing. You need to go in with answers. This person's going to ask you straight away about this stuff. Do you know have you got an answer for that? That's experience that you've picked up that they may not see and they may not be ready for. So it's sort of almost giving them the thought process of saying, like, if I was preparing this meeting, the things I'm worried about are this, and this. Again, it's up to you how you do it, but these are the things that I'd be concerned about. So it's opening your head up to show your thought processes, because if you tell them just literally, make sure you've got the information about A, B, and C. Make sure you've got this, and this. They need to understand why they're having that information, why they need to get that ready, because then that way to the next situation and go, right, this person is full of questions. They're going to take one answer. They need to know that I'm on top of what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that's something I can definitely do more of as I develop as a manager as well, I guess.
Perhaps a way of doing that is I was just going to say, perhaps a way of doing it that is less prescriptive in a way, is to say, ask questions. You're going in with the CEO. What do you think the CEO wants to know? Do you think he's going to have anything else to say about that? Is that going to satisfy what he wants to know? And help them by getting curious about, actually, I haven't really thought this through. Hang on a minute. Yeah, he's going to want to know that, and that, or she's going to need to know X. If you run into the office with the CEO and you're 5 minutes late, what do you think how would you feel about that if you're the CEO? Well, I would like, okay, it's sort of being able, it sounds very, very sort of, brass tacks and no rocket science, but it's really helping them to think through that situation and getting the understanding behind it rather than just the information.
Yeah, and that, I guess, that kind of talks to the other point as well, as is of opening their kind of thought processes to kind of think a bit more broadly rather than, like you say, being prescriptive, which is the key thing that I want to help my team to do, is kind of think a bit more broadly about the bigger picture that's going on around them, and how our actions have an impact on the wider organization. So I think all of those are good tips that I can nick.
And I had a situation when, in my former life, I was working in comms and working with you before I became a coach. I remember having a conversation with you. Someone gave me feedback about some work you'd done, and it wasn't up to your usual standard in the way that it was done. And I asked you the question. I explained what happened, was open, but pretty clear, dealt with it really, really swiftly. And I said to you, and you were like, yeah, actually, that's right, that did happen, and I could have, that was not great. And I just simply asked you, if you did that again, what would you do? And you were straight on it, which was, yeah, you know what, I wouldn't have promised that. I would have made sure I'd done that, and I'd have just been honest about this. And it's, your realization, it helps. The realization helps immediately,
Yeah, definitely. And I remember that situation as well.
So also about like that delegation side of things and making sure that you're passing stuff to people. And I think the bottom line about it is people aren't going to learn unless you let them do it. And putting the guardrails in that they feel most comfortable with, because there's both been times I know there'll be times when we've all felt like we've been chucked right into it, and they may need a few more guards before they take the stabilizers, so to speak, you know. But without actually doing, you're not going to learn. You know, kind of circle you get with delegation. To, you know, they don't know how to do it, so I can't let it go to them. You give it, you don't give it to them, so you're continually doing it. They don't learn to do it, and you go around and round and round. There's got to be a point you've got to let go of that work, and you've got to help them to learn.
Yeah, I guess that's the other question though, from me, is when you've kind of say we use this technique, and how many times do you allow it to fail before you realise that there might be something more at play than the technique. What am I doing, and what are the next steps to kind of go, right, we've tried this hasn't worked. When does that become an issue for the team? And what are the kind of next steps that you think could kind of help get back on track, or help me kind of navigate that next situation?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just the same thing as getting curious again. It's like we all make assumptions about why something's going on or what's happened, and whether or not some work has landed. And one of the things I often think of is when they give you a piece of work, they explain what they want you to do or what's happening, and then you ask the question, do you understand what you've got to do? And if you're not doing so well, and you're feeling a little out of your depth, the answer you're likely to say is yes. You're not going to say, no, I don't understand what you said, or I don't understand what I've got. You'll go away and go, oh God, what am I supposed to do with this? So I think often in those scenarios, first and foremost, when you start, is it landing, is to just ask them. We just run through, what do you think? What do we think we're doing with this? Just run through what you're going to do with this piece of work. Just a little bit about what you think you need to do with it. Any thoughts or any other questions you've got, so that then you're getting them to repeat back to you the understanding of what that work is.
Yeah.
As opposed to accepting the fact they say, yes, I understand, because you're intimidated and slightly scared and being unconfident, then you're going to say that. You're absolutely right, though, mate, that if you're trying it, as I say, get curious, ask the question. I'm just interested to know, I want you to do well. I'm interested to know what's happening here. We sort of went through this work, and it's not quite what I was expecting. You just see what's been happening to you, what's happening here. You know, how are you feeling about this?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not doing my job well, because I'm not giving you the information you need to do this job in the way that I know you can. What is it I'm missing?
Yeah, I think that's so a lot of it is replaying beforehand and after what's going on.
Yeah, and to really listening, paying attention. You're also listening, because so we can make lots of assumptions about why someone hasn't done something, why they are doing something, and thinking it's down to competence, when it could be something completely not the case. They may be struggling working with somebody. They might be struggling, getting into a department to get the work. They might be shutting them down, and they may not want, open up immediately. So there's all sorts of things. So I think being curious in the first instance, and then it's into points where it's actually, is there training required? Is there someone in your team that you've got that does it well, that they can sort of learn from and see how they do it? Buddy them up in some way that's going to help them, and start to sort of try and look at it from a more sort of like you say, slightly lower level of the role and the things that they need to do.
Yeah. I was just wondering, and this is probably, this is a bit further down the line, but if you have like a larger team in that kind of team development space, and having the time to do all of this, say, I don't have a massive team at the moment, but you could have a team of 6, 7 direct reports. How do you balance kind of team development versus actually having to do your own job? Because 6 or 7 people, that's 6 or 7, weekly catch up, 6 or 7 hours every month to do a development thing, all on top of actually the job that you need to do. I wonder if anyone listening might kind of think, actually, how do you manage that when it's great when you've got 2 or 3 people in your team, but how do you do it when you've got a massive team that are all trying to do their jobs as well, but you want to bring them on as well?
Great, good question, mate. It's interesting, isn't it? And everyone will have a different view about some of these things. One of them, and foremost, I think, is that you probably shouldn't be, no matter how big the team is, you probably shouldn't be line managing more than a few people. It's just not that practical. The team should be divided in a way that allows people to have the attention that they need. One of your foremost roles as a manager is to help the team do their job. Your job is less important. Your job is to help the team theirs and develop. So in order to help them do their job, you help to develop them to get better and able to do it properly. So then I think we often use the excuse we don't have time, we're in meetings all the time. But you do have to look at very carefully. If I don't have time to be working and helping my team and making myself available, then there are some questions to be asked. But I do understand it's a very practical thing. The reality is, if you are managing too many people, that is in itself a problem. But let's look at the wider thing. If you do have to do it, I think it does require time. It does require a bit of efficiency. It's just setting aside maybe one day a month to do all of your one-to-ones.
I mean, that's something I try to do at the moment, is make sure that I have a one-to-one day where that's kind of my team's day. It's dedicated to me looking at the doc that we have for our one-to-ones, making sure that I've got everything that I want on there for this one-to-one and the following one. It's just, I think, just losing you sometimes. It's the first thing, I think, as a manager, you naturally, because you're so worried about your job and kind of losing your job or not being seen to be good at your role, that the first thing I think a lot of managers do is the development and the one-to-ones of your team goes out the window, because you always feel like they're movable. And I know from watching your stuff and having worked with you, that's something that kind of you've instilled, that actually they're the priority. And that's something that I've kept on, and I always make sure that, or even if I have to move the time, it definitely has to happen once a week, because things come up, but I've always thought it's probably I know the feeling of going, right, I could really not do without doing that one-to-one because I've got so much work on. But making sure that you actually do stick to it, I've found your team appreciates it a hell of a lot. Something I try to keep up through my working life.
It's difficult. There are practical things, but like I said, you're better off looking at how you can juggle around your workload. At the end of the day, the team are going to pick up the workload, and if you're constantly just picking up more and more of the work and not bringing your team forward and on to be able to help you with work, your position's never going to get any easier, and they're going to get frustrated and stagnate in the roles they're in, and so you've got an underperforming team and a burnt out manager. So exactly. Taking that time and starting to rely and go, say no to people at times. I can't actually do this work. I've got stuff I need to be doing. You do need to, with the practicalities that you can, stay, keep that development up, and the one-to-ones and the face-to-face contact. And sometimes it doesn't require. It just needs you to be contactable and around, where they can just talk to you. Not being absent, not being in a meeting. We all know there are times when I need someone to sign something off or to have a chat about something, and they're always in a meeting. And there will be days like that. Don't expect there to be weeks like that.
Yeah.
If there are, you've got to organise your time better. We all think to be at meetings, but we don't.
Yeah. On board and have some clarity on it is always really helpful.
All right, thanks, Kieran.
Thank you very much, Danny. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks to you, the listener, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Kieran. If you like what you heard, hit subscribe or follow. And if you have an issue that you'd like to bring to the pod, just get in touch. Details are in the description and drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, goodbye.